simply saying that due to our very complex network, we should disclaim the view and conclusion of this research actually is just a piece of a very complex research, and we have a lot of partners, as you will see at the end, just to mention the FDA, Air Force Scientific Research Center, National Institute of Health, and so on. And it's important to acknowledge the contribution of Uppsala University and Cluj University in Romania in this long project. I would say we started more than 6 years ago to develop these particular aspects. And some animal models, very interesting animal models with comorbidities. Now, I will simply acknowledge the fact that many advances have been done in the last decade, and whenever we are trying to talk about treatment-related concepts, strategies, and molecules, we should correlate this with neurobiology. Otherwise, it will happen as actually it is the case of neuroprotection, which is an incomplete concept, and I would say even a kind of inconsistent concept. So in order to have in mind the developments, I will acknowledge just these 4 important take-home messages: that today we should address everything to neurovascular unit, not only to neuron, because all the functions are provided by neurovascular unit as a whole. Then the synergistic molecular effect, as there is no one molecule able to deliver a single effect of brain function. Post-lesional brain regulation particularly, and the concept of neuromodulation is extremely important and will make a difference in the future. And in relation with these 2 important topics, post-lesional brain regulation and the concept of neuromodulation, I would like to acknowledge that after acute brain lesion, there is always an endogenous post-lesional regulation, and this endogenous post-lesional regulation consists of 2 sequences. The first is neuroprotection, and the rest is related to trophicity, plasticity, and neurogenesis, which actually is boosting the neuroregeneration. So 2 sequences, neuroprotection and neuroregeneration. There is a very clear time sequence that is acknowledged today for this holistic, I would say, rather process than sequential. And today we define this as endogenous defense activity. So these 2 sequences are very, very important. And this is basically the sense and the reality of post-lesional brain regulation. On the other hand, we have damage mechanism, and damage mechanism, this mechanism is also a new important challenge for us, because the new vision is that behind all these pathophysiological mechanisms are usual biological processes which are in balance during the damage process. Actually, for example, excitotoxicity is an imbalance in NMDA receptor stimulation, and excitotoxicity is the bad part, but the good stimulation of excitotoxicity will contribute to plasticity. So actually, all pathophysiological mechanism represents imbalances in normal processes. So therefore, we should not suppress or overstimulate these processes, but we should modulate. And the modulation is the current philosophy. And this is in line with the new findings. We used to classify endogenous molecules by their effects somehow in a dichotomic way. But today we know that there is almost no one molecule being bad or good. For example, we know that TNF-alpha, which was classified as a bad one, is an important player in a certain sequence for neuroregeneration when acting on receptor 2. Also, for example, trophic factor, BDNF is useful, but the pro-BDNF is inducing apoptosis. So all these balances are also in favor of modulation. What we are doing in our vast research project is to focus on the blood-CNS barriers, and particularly on blood-brain barrier. And we know that blood-brain barrier is just a tiny little part of neurovascular unit. And we try to create animal model by calibrating very specific and reproducible etiological agents like heat stroke, so basically a very well-defined time and as a level of high temperature, usually 38 degrees for hours. So this hyperthermia is the key of having a very nice stable model, and then to evaluate the capacity to protect against different etiological agents our brain. And in this respect, I will just point to this important biomarker, which is nitric oxide synthetase, and the role and the effect of NOS in this blood-brain barrier damage. We know that it's a strong correlation between the overexpression and the blood-brain barrier breakdown, edema formation, and neural damage. And we published a lot of papers clarifying many aspects regarding NO and brain. And also our work is focused almost on how to protect and how to use different molecules. So we use different molecules in different dosage to protect against particularly this blood-brain barrier breakdown. And we had a very interesting result. And what we realize is that for a certain etiological agent, it is very, very important, the context and the comorbidity of the subject. So we created an animal model with double and triple comorbidities, and we demonstrated, and currently we are investigating the best dose for neuroprotective drugs for animal with triple comorbidity, and we demonstrated that there is a clear correlation between the number of comorbidities and the level of neuroprotection that we have to address, actually the dose. And our observation is that aggregated comorbidities heavily influence the need for neuroprotection in respect to those particularly, and comorbidity is an independent influencing factor to be considered for translational issues, and also to be considered for the new design of neuroprotection and recovery clinical trials. Protection and recovery is very important to be linked together. And this is different than dosage being an independent factor as well. So I will not elaborate too much on how we create these animal models, diabetic and hypertensive animal, and as I have said, the heat stroke was and hyperthermia was the etiological agent that we created. We used to have the 2-king-1 clean model and the diabetic induced by streptozotocin, and I will jump directly to the results. And I would like to mention that actually the more comorbidities we have, the higher is the need for more consistent dose for anti-stressful agents and protective molecules. So we define the correlation between blood-brain barrier permeability and brain edema as a linear function. The heat stress is creating a lot of damage, and particularly blood-brain barrier disruption. The level of sensitivity is different in different areas of the brain, as you may see here in different areas. You have different levels of brain edema after the same intensity of an etiological agent. Also the blood-brain barrier leakage is different in different areas. Also the level of tissue injury, direct tissue injury is different. And also the overexpression of heat stress proteins. So what we observe also, that it's not only a correlation between an etiological agent comorbidity and the need for neuroprotection, but also the type of drug is very important. And multimodal drugs are more efficient than single monomodal drugs, single mechanism monomodal drugs. And we explore more than 20 types of molecules, and actually it's common knowledge what the multimodality is the capacity to create at the same time protection and regeneration without disturbing each other. And we use Cerebrolysin for this, as this is one of the most prominent multimodal drugs, and it's also very well known that this is the only drug available for clinical use containing active fragments of trophic factors. We had a lot of good results in our research on different animal models. I just listed a couple of papers here published, and what we decided is to go ahead with the technologies and to try to use the nanoparticles and nanowires, and we wired Cerebrolysin, and this is a proof of our success, and this was awarded in May in National Innovation Summit and Showcase in Washington, and we have, let's say, the pleasure to acknowledge this, and what we used was this type of titanium nanowires with this aspect to wire Cerebrolysin, and what we found is that nanowire Cerebrolysin, it's almost double in the sense of efficacy comparing with the normal one. So we can, I don't have more time to show you the superiority of this, but this is clear that there is a clear superiority, and just to draw the conclusion, our observation demonstrates that the comorbidity factor exacerbates brain damage in heat stroke, and NOS is one of the important agents, and we can measure this in a very reliable way. And furthermore, neuroprotection depends on the dose, but not only depends also in the way in which we are delivering drugs, and nanotechnologies are highly contributing to this, let's say, strongly positive effect and the better development and outcome after the treatment. Thank you very much. I would like to acknowledge our large group and the general support of different agencies working with us, our group of collaboration, and to invite you for our 9th Congress of the Society for the Study of Neuroprotection and Neuroplasticity in Prague next October, so in 1 month or so. Thank you. Questions? If not, we can talk during the break, as I really like to keep the time. So it's not easy without my nice wife or a partner. I have to do the one-man show, but it's my great pleasure to invite Dr. Nera from India, and I'm kindly invited to present a very interesting new Indian aphasia battery tool for specific diagnosis of language disorder post-stroke.
Thank you very much, respected Chairperson. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for giving me an opportunity to come and present my work, on which I spent almost 14 full years, the work which I started almost 25 years ago. This work I have done along with Dr. Dwarka Prasad. He and I, we worked together all through. Recently, I've requested Dr. Srinivas to help me regarding the statistical analysis. And this is the photograph of the institute I come from. I've listed my talk. I've listed my talk under these outlines, including introduction, classification, tests of aphasia, Lekine, aims and objectives, brief introduction to the Indian aphasia battery, steps of test preparation, final domains, the details of the study results, graph, test, and reset test reliability, usefulness, and future directions. As you all know very well, a brain attack may lead to a stroke, and a stroke leading to an aphasia, and it could be of the two types, the Broca's and the Wernicke's. So what is important is the language, and it can be classified by the syndrome type, the lesion type, the blood supply, naming, speech, sentence production, comprehension, etc. There are various tests which are available all over the world, and these tests are mostly in English. And some of these tests have been picked up by some of the people in India, and they have been adapted to Indian language, which is Hindi. As you know, India is a very, very diverse country. Every state is kind of speaking a little different dialect. And so it is very important when it comes to language that to pick up something which can assess the person's exact problem with stroke and especially aphasia. Hence, I found that there was a non-availability of a North Indian test which could assess this particular population, and the most of the work which was done was either done down south. Hence, the lacunae which I assessed were the test developed in English language cannot be translated. If it translates, then obviously the linguistic value goes away. Then the item selection does not fit in. For example, when you're using things like rake, Indians don't know what rake is. There's some of the items which Indians have no idea about. The tests developed in Hindi are not colloquial. Colloquial meaning they should be exactly assessing the person who they are assessing and exactly identifying the problems. All the tests are time consuming, can take up to 1 to 1.5 hours. A differential diagnosis is both the basis of a descriptive and predictive value in aphasia. So a detailed assessment provides a guide for treatment, and I'm running the clinical neuropsychology in the Neurosciences Center at AIMS, and a lot of patients are coming for neuropsychological rehabilitation. This is not possible unless we have something sensitive to evaluate what we really need to work upon. Then the levels of disruption in each of the language modality underlying and disruptions are important for their long-term planning. So the aim of this work was to develop an Indian test for differential diagnosis of aphasia in Hindi, which is suitable to an Indian condition, to work the procedure of administration, scoring and standardization. As I said earlier, I started it almost 25 years ago, and it's a 14th year of a work in a clinical investigation at ENT neurology at the Postgraduate Institute of Medical Education and Research, Chandigarh, which is in the north, and at the neuropsychology where I am working right now, neurology and the Neurosciences Center at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Delhi, India. The steps of the test construction were selection of items. First of all, I'd like to say that I went through a lot of tests. I could not pick up any of the things, but I wanted to pick up the ideas, how they've used it, so that I can create something meaningful and interesting, something which appropriately evaluates the person. So hence the test selection was important. Forward translation, initially in English, I made it, and then forward translation, expert panel back translation, selecting linguistically appropriate material, including combination of words, selection of the type of pictures that I wanted to use, design drawing with the help of the artist, and then expert panel working out administrative techniques. A pilot tryout was done, and believe me, I started off evaluating each patient, and it was taking me approximately 8 hours to evaluate each person. And I was spending like almost a week. So the patients were admitted, and I used to start in the morning. And of course, they used to be not so cooperative, and I used to continue till I was able to evaluate it. And then finally, I had to clip it, just like one makes a movie and one has to clip with the clippings and put it together and give it a shape. I had to do it 5 times by repeated evaluation on set of patients. The item discrimination was done. Initially, the 5 domains or the areas that I covered had some 10 subtypes each. Then I looked at the sensitivity and the specificity of the test. Repeated change at manual, prepared manual finally, and scoring and answer booklet, and the final process of standardization and retest reliability. So the final domains are acoustic problems, speech and language problems, simple mathematical problems, perceptive motor and writing problems, visual and verbal problems, and as I said that I have to clip it, I finally have 3 to 10 subtests, and the patient performer social demographic medical sheet, 1 set of cards, patient scoring sheet, manual for administration, scoring norms, a kit containing performance material, what we have to hand over to the patients to do. The final test, first of all, acoustic problems, includes identifying common words, distinguishing between paired words, understanding meaning of sentences, following commands, understanding passage. And these are some of the pictures. As you can see here, this is a combination. For you, when it comes to your own languages, it may mean nothing. when it comes to our Hindi language, people who understand Hindi, this is makki and makhi. So obviously, which creates a confusion in the people or the patients to identify what exactly am I saying. But same thing, if let's take an example of English, you may call it as P's and B's. P's and B's would create a confusion when an English speaking person, a patient is evaluated. Similarly, this is a combination of anda and danda. Well, again, it could be a snake and a rake, or a snake and a stick, which can actually cause a confusion in the English speaking. So hence, I have to pick up combinations which could be appropriate to our language. Similarly, following directions where it had to be in increasing difficulty order. Then is speech and language problems, which was a very essential part. And as you've seen, I've clipped very little out of this here. Copying cross movements, quick alternating movements, imitating phrases, counting to 20, naming days of week, answering easy questions, giving personal information, describing photographs, identifying pictures, and description of words. And these are some of the things that I have finally been able to keep with the pictures which are more appropriate to people who are understanding and who are coming from my setup. Simple mathematical problems where money handling, setting, time, simple numerical calculations. Again, with the money handling in increasing difficulty order, if they can identify and they can use this. And if they don't, then my next step is to do something for their neuropsychological rehabilitation in that area. Then is perceptual-motor and writing problems where imitating Greek letters, writing till 20, immediate memory, making sentences from words, etc. And these are again some of the examples of the final test. And the visual and verbal problems where word-picture match, comprehending passage and reading words. And again, these are words which can actually create confusion in the educated or low-educated. So these again have been done with the help of linguists. The final test is a hospital-based study that I've done with the age range of 18 to 81 years. The matching criteria was age, sex, and education. The family type, both urban and rural. The education up to, as you know, that India, there's a lot of illiteracy, so it was very important and challenging to bring up something so that I can evaluate those patients as well. So this test finally evaluates people up to 5th class, 6 to 9 years of education, and 10th and above. Total of 259 subjects have been evaluated, out of which 122 been of physics, 74 controls, and 63 other than of physics. An estimated time now, from where I started 8 hours, takes me 40 to 45 minutes. The test results on the work that I've done in the 5 areas, including the global aphasia quotient, as you can find that there is a high sensitivity and specificity with a good p-value. And the more the curve under this high discriminating ability, the higher of the ability this test is sensitive to be picking up the minute problems. This is test-retest reliability, and which I have done along with my colleague from Dr. Dharamveer from PGI Chandigarh. And since he is running the speech and hearing unit in PGI, so we've done it on brain damaged and the normal patients, and again we found good results. And again, we found it in the 2 trials that there was a good correlation. The usefulness of the test is in neuropsychology, in neurology, neurosurgery, psychiatry, otolaryngology, and speech pathology. Indian Aphasia Battery is a sensitive and a comprehensive test for differential diagnosis. Well, as you know, that we cannot be Mr. Know-all and Miss Do-all. We all need to work together, and we need to work on the interdisciplinary work. So everybody's worked together. In future, I would like to evaluate this battery with anatomical relations of deficits, correlation with other neurological functions, with fMRI, and assessment, anatomical localization, retraining, and reassessment for improvement. Well, I'd like to state something here. I have not brought that material, but I've completed the use of this battery and cognitive retraining, neuropsychological comprehensive cognitive retraining, including aphasia therapy on 3 patients. The work on the 4th patient is on. Hopefully, I'll be able to bring more data the next time. And I'd like to prepare a quick bedside tool for our use. I'd like to acknowledge the work of Dr. M. Raghunathan, late Dr. M. Raghunathan, who was the head of speech and hearing unit. Late Professor Y. Mehra, again, who was a professor and head of the ENT, the linguist experts, the artists. Of course, without the patients, all this work wouldn't have been possible. Dr. Dharamveer, Dr. N. K. Panda, again, the professor and head of ENT, Dr. Manish Modi, who is a neurologist, and the biostatisticians, including my students, and of course the controls. And finally, I'd like to thank the publisher who's finally now giving it a shape. It's not published as yet, but thank you very much, and I'd like to invite you all to India, to incredible India. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this very interesting and provocative presentation.
Thank you.
If there are questions, please.
So,
Well, I want very much to applaud your project. I think it's very important, as you show, that we do not simply transfer items from one language to the other. I've seen all across the world all too often that some kind of American items that we show to people who didn't recognize them, and then diagnose as a faces. I think it's a very, very important piece of work, and I'm very glad that you have done it. What was not quite clear to me, you focused quite a lot on the single word level, like the example of this maki and maki and so on.
yeah.
What about more grammatical structures? I mean, which kind of things are you examining very much?
Regarding the grammatical, I've taken help from the speech pathologist. We picked up list of things which are most often used in Hindi language. We picked up these tests, and over here I've just given you examples of some of them. I've not brought the whole test here. And we've picked up these words for the patient to for example, repeat. Let's take an example of, there are different vowels, and there are different, for example, what should I say? It's like syllables. And a combination of these syllables have been formed, and the person has to repeat it after me. So it kind of covers all the domains. I've just bought a few of them here because I was told clearly on email that I just am given 10 minutes and I will not be given more time.
Of course, I'm particularly interested. I mean, I will be speaking later. I mean, today.